Welcome back to the show, everybody. Take a look at these numbers while we run the headlines here. Black Swan event, it's still on the table, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get into it. And how about the BRICS coalition meeting in New York? Say what? And how about this? Crypto executive order, U.S. Treasury gets a response from Ripple, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to want it. And how about this weaponized case, the SEC versus Ripple? There may be so much more hidden in the arguments. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow me on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Right now, we're at 972 billion plus for the crypto market cap. Coin Paprika, download that app. Bitcoin right now, 19,100 plus. Ethereum, 1,300 plus. And at the number 6 spot is XRP at 46 cents. I've got my favorite list up here, so you can just take a quick look at it. We'll do a deep dive on it someday, but take a look at that. I've got a few more I need to add on that list, actually. But look at this. You guys know it's a sponsor. It's Glint, baby. But I love being a customer even more. And this is Mel. Congratulations to Mel. It says, I opened an account this weekend. Highly encourage others to do as well. An ideal banking account in this inflationary environment. Hashtag gold, hashtag digital currency. Come on in, be your own bank. Alternative to banking is Glint Pay. It is gold fi, baby. It is money. And I love using it. And I encourage you to know this. You click that link under there and get yourself a Glint Pay card where you can get physically allocated gold and a debit card that you can spend it on to hedge this inflation we're in. You will be addicted to doing so. There's no question about it. You won't stop once you start. And it's an amazing experience. Right here, Bitcoin has no future as payment network, says FTX Sam Bankman-Fried. We all know XRP is the future of payments, says XRP Avengers, and I do too, but I think we all know that Bitcoin is not a payments thing. But I need you to listen to this from Timothy Masad, who is formerly of the CFTC. Talk about the importance for stablecoin regulation, how it's a hot topic. We have so much to look at today. I think it's going to be a very, very, very revealing video here of what just may be really in front of this case and all of us. Take a listen to this.
If you're registered as a money service business, you have to register with FinCEN, right, which is a department of the Treasury, which enforces anti-money laundering and rules. So that's a good thing. We are imposing those kinds of restrictions on stablecoins based in the US. But this is not a sufficient framework. To suggest it's sufficient is sort of like saying, well, you know, there's no difference between an Excel spreadsheet and a blockchain. What can that do, you know?
Some people say that.
Yeah, I know. Some people do.
Some of them are sat in this room right now.
Yeah. Right. We need a comprehensive framework. Right. What would that involve? Prudential regulation first to make sure that these stablecoins are fully reserved.
Really quick, prudential regulation is not SEC, CFTC. They are market regulators. Prudential regulation is pointing to the Treasury, FSOC, and OFAC, and regulatory agencies of that ilk.
Meaning they have cash or Treasury securities backing them. But more importantly, there's no stable in a stablecoin today because there's no resolution framework. You know, if a bank fails, right, we have a well-developed framework. The FDIC steps in very quickly, usually on a weekend. Depositors are insured, and, you know, life goes on. Everybody's fine. If a stablecoin were to default, were to collapse, it would be handled as a normal bankruptcy, which means the automatic stay applies, right? So holders are not going to get their money for months, years, potentially. And what we call the pari passu rule applies. So even though I'm a holder of a stablecoin, I'm in the same category as all other unsecured creditors. So if the stablecoin issuer has leveraged itself, well, you know, I'm going to be competing with all of them. So that's a big problem.
And listen, you know, this is really pointing, and shout out to Timothy Masad for making the points. And I'm only cutting this because we got to get through so much material today, and it's so important we get through every single bit of it. But, you know, the point he's making is where things are now is not a solution make. Okay? You know, we can't be dealt with as unsecured creditors to a stable coin. I remind you of this, and we're being reminded from Blockworks, and we're also being reminded from Cointelegraph and CoinDesk as well. I'm not going to show you that, but the U.S. judge has ordered Tether stablecoin to prove what backs USD Tether. And I tell you, and what makes my head spin right here is basically Du Bois and Plimpton they represent Tether have requested the court to deny the untimely and unreasonable request, saying that plaintiffs have shown no good cause to ask for the documents. They basically thumbed their nose and said, you know what? We're not doing it. This is to the Attorney General of the Southern District of New York. Oh boy, what a bad idea that is. However, while its attestation and other reports that they have been providing do provide a general skeleton for Tether's reserves, which they just recently started to provide this, they're still saying that it's not clear enough. Split between assets, U.S. and other treasuries, cash and bank deposits, money market funds, the specific makeup of Tether's commercial paper, short-term corporate debt holdings has never been revealed. Complete financial audit making the recent court order for detailed information and all the more interesting. Now, I'll tell you, when I think of this, the court noted allegations that Tether issued USDT completely unbacked and printed out of thin air. You know, when you someone explained to me how Tether is, if it was up to either the SDNY or to the U.S. Department of Justice, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out why someone from those two agencies would not come out and say that USD Tether is essentially a publicly advertised digital counterfeit currency. Someone explain to me how someone from the Department of Justice or SDNY is not quickly coming to that same opinion. Watch out for that. If that happens, that is going to be a huge black swan event in crypto, ladies and gentlemen. Head on a swivel. And we know the economy's headed for a real moment too. This right here is encouraging because it's the white paper for Australian CBDC project, which is sponsored by RBA, Australian Central Bank, has been released today. Project will be led by none other than former Ripple executive Dilip Rao. Yeah, not letting any grass grow underneath his feet, he says. It's exciting times. He isn't worried about retirement, even though I congratulated him on it. Shout out to you, Dilip. You know, I will say also it was referenced in there that Ethereum, I believe, and Ethereum were mentioned. So keep an eye out for where these things go. This is Dilip Rao here talking at the end here about thinking about a $27 trillion problem and how financial institutions will use it. That's why he's not selling his XRP.
A $27 trillion, base that is there today. So if you go by that, I'm not selling my XRP.
Me either, Dilip. Me either. And then moving to this, because Ted Smith shared this with us. Shout out to you, Ted. BRICS meeting in the heart of the United States financial capital, New York, ladies and gentlemen. Look at them. Will you look at them? Take a look at it. You know, it's very interesting the things that are happening right now, because to go along with that, we get this from James Rule, the U.S. Department of Treasury here. Implications for consumers, investors, and businesses on crypto assets. Report submitted from the executive order here from the Treasury. We see the response being filed by none other than Ripple. And if we get into that, I just want to highlight a few things here for you very quickly. One, they cover micropayments and how XRP can solve problems through that, especially involving low value payments. I am really just going through this thing very, very quickly here. If we go to page 6 here, you can see it is talking about sustainable development goals here, target of 3% by 2030, right? It talks about also XRP as a bridge currency. It breaks down exactly what it does. Ripple software leverages XRP as a bridge between currencies. So it's not a threat to the currencies of the world. It is a complement, the use of the bridge asset like XRP, supported by software solutions like RippleNet. You see how all of this comes together. I'm just highlighting a few of these things because we still have so much more to see. Then I also want to show you on this page here the bills that are endorsed by Ripple in their response to the U.S. Treasury, let us not forget, by the way, how many people from the Treasury, like Michael S. Barr, who's now the VP of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, Susan Friedman, Craig Phillips, Rosie Rios. That's just the ones we know about, right? And they're endorsing to the Treasury the Digital Commodities Exchange Act, which we've all been aware of, the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, and recently the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act as well, that all seek to clarify jurisdiction digital asset space by giving the Commodity Futures Trade Commission authority over spot digital asset commodity markets. So these are the bills that are really backed and endorsed by Ripple, at least in talking with the Treasury. So if there's something you wanted to get behind, there you have it. Then there's this conversation we've been having for years on this channel, and Nathan Price brings it to a head here. And we're about to hear from Jeremy Hogan, which could also be coming at this whole thing from another completely different angle. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to move through this quickly. Shout out to Nathan Price says, so if XRP is a stable coin, according to the World Bank, which we've covered heavily here, and is considered widely adopted globally according to SEC, that sounds like a global stable coin. To me, it looks like info from State Street, the EU, the BIS, the IMF, and President's Working Group want restrictions on global stable coins. Security? No? Yes? If you go through this information, I'm going to move very quickly here. It highlights, and you could get all of this on my Twitter, but we have even more to go through. But it's State Street. Listen, Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street. These are your biggest investors of the world and all things of the economy, and certainly Main Street. This is why I haven't allowed mainstream news in my home for going on 10 years now. Mainstream media news doesn't get into this household. And the reason it doesn't is because if you look up the shareholders, the largest shareholders of CNN and the largest shareholders of Fox News, guess who's there? Vanguard and BlackRock, on both of them. Isn't that something? Follow the money, not the news. Follow the money, not the narrative. Retail and institutions using the same wholesale product. They don't like retail and institutions blending, says State Street. Coming over to here, the BIS here talking about stablecoins could be used by anyone, retail or general purpose, or only a limited set of actors, financial institutions, or selected clients of financial institutions known as wholesale, right? This report covers that they apply all stablecoins while at times drawing out issues, particular relevance of stablecoins. It does highlight in here, however, when you talk about global stablecoins, right, it does highlight in this, is assumed to be held as a form of savings. That's how they highlight it here. And that's important. It's important. You're going to hear Matthew Solomon talk about debt equity instruments and things of that, tokens. You're going to hear it. However, it is possible that intermediaries may emerge that borrow or take deposits in global stablecoins and lend the coins to borrowers, thereby creating money. Uh-oh. That sounds a lot to me like we need to call this thing some form of a bond, but then when the real wholesaler gets a hold of it and then lends it to someone else, it can be money. This would further weaken domestic monetary policy transmission as returns to domestic savers and the interest rate paid by domestic borrowers would both be less responsive to monetary policy because of the global stablecoin sitting in between it. But let's move because we got a lot to see here very quickly here. Reasons the global stablecoin not for retail. Look at what it says right here in this particular instance. It's list that RippleNet suite of products, XCurrent, XRapid, XVIA, which we're all aware of, right? Yes, it is a hybrid. And if you look down here, hybrid tokens can be classified as debt or equity securities if they share characteristics of asset tokens. For example, if the hybrid instrument generates interest for the holder, it should be classified as a debt security. Well, You know, all of this is very, very compelling, ladies and gentlemen. Not just one more page I wanted to show you here. This is from the President's Working Group, where they talk about here limitation on multi-currency stable coins. In the United States, this may require, it says, limitations on any stable coins that is not exchangeable for underlying fiat currency, one-to-one net of fees, or for which the value is determined by reference to more than one fiat multi-currency stable coins. So I have to ask myself in this particular instance, what are we talking about if we're not talking about a one-to-one of currency fiat? Are we talking about a basket? Are we talking about commodities, multi-currency stablecoin? What are we talking about here with the President's Working Group in that particular instance? And we all know this is from the World Bank, which we've covered heavily here, that does reference XRP and XLM as stable coins. That's how they see it. So let's move very quickly here because that's a double of the post. But then we get into very quickly here, Jeremy Hogan here talking about what was on his mind before he was laying down last night. And he says, Ripple argued that XRP is not a security because it has no post-sale obligations to purchasers. What was the post-sale obligation in Howey? In Howey, the defendant sold small plots of orange grows to investors. And that would have been fine if that's all they had done. But then, after the purchase of the plots, the investors then turned around and entered into an optional 10-year lease service agreement contract with defendant's affiliate, allowing the affiliate to manage the grows as an entire unit and distribute profits back to investors. It was that pooling of money and management of the grows as one of the unit, which was the pooling of money in the common enterprise we hear about in the Howey case. Pooling of money for investment, right? And profit. Now, if we go down here a little further here, he says the Howey had maintained these grows, distributed profits to investors or risk being sued. And then if you come down here, there is a spot in here I want to get to. I said here, basically, I'm sure we need more summary judgment evidence and filings because we don't have everything in as of yet. I do wonder if there's an angle for a similar argument for the Ripple lease program and possibly the buyback about the pooling of XRP. And the reason I'm really asking that, and very grateful for the insight of Jeremy Hogan here, is listen to this quick little exchange of Matthew Solomon from this past summer on stage with Steve Buchholz, SEC attorney, discussing the BlockFi case and the Reeves test. And when something is of note, and not only will you hear Matthew Solomon say it, but you're going to hear Steve Buchholz talk about the pooling of crypto.
I think I looked yesterday what's happened with all that. There may have been some extensions. I don't think we have clarity on that. Finding something, it's not a finding that's legally binding. This is the way that these settlements are styled. But the commission found that this lending product was a equity security.
An equity security. Well, that's interesting because when we come back to that, we go to here. And if I could very quickly, I just want to remind you, hybrid tokens, they could be classified as a debt or equity security. RippleNet is showing here the digital ledger definition. Hybrid falls under debt security. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be the case, but you have to start wondering where this language leads. Now, let me skip a little further here and hear what Steve Buchholz says about his interpretation of Reeves.
Can require registration under the Investment Company Act. Those seem, to me, just based on the reading of the public document and the findings, to be pretty significant.
And like Matt said,
great.
Yeah, I can't elaborate in any way that you would enjoy. I don't think. But I don't disagree, however, with your read of the order, which does, to me, make some significant findings regarding the application of Reeves and the note analysis to lending products, as well as noting that these types of pooled crypto can require registration under the make some significant findings regarding the application of Reeves and the note analysis to lending products, as well as noting that these types of pooled crypto can require registration under the Investment Company Act.
That is pretty damn compelling there. Now, if I come back to the thought analysis and that he was sharing, Jeremy Hogan was sharing here, you know, he comes down here at the bottom here, and I said, we like when you think out loud. He said, I stopped before the Reeves test or I would get really boring. Oh, no, you wouldn't. You're never boring and always great. Listen, I don't know whether this conversation or this thought process that Jeremy is having is going to take him into the area of the Reeves test or not. But I'm hoping it does, at least for him on a legal level, to say, I'm putting this aside, or, you know what, there may be more here than we realize, right? And I can't wait for that hopefully that analysis to come from him in that regard, because we could all certainly use a little direction in this thing. And then there was this, because you have to think about the idea that if that argument of that weaponized case with the SEC versus Ripple is really coming down to what happens to the escrow. Think about all the people from the treasury there, because Jeremy Hogan gives a doomsday scenario here. He says, you know, since we're talking doom and gloom about what could happen, what about adding the possibility of an injunction against Ripple in a judgment or ruling from selling XRP, and what having the entire escrow effectively locked up by the government means? I don't know. Now, for those on the technical side of things, the escrow is cryptographically auto-locked in an escrow account. But as Jeremy Hogan has said, along with Attorney Seal on my show at least a year or more ago, they said it clear then when we had a discussion about the idea of the pre-allocation and the escrow and what could happen to it. If this is indeed a situation where this could be a possible outcome, one has to consider the idea that the Treasury could come in every month and become the steward instead of Ripple of that escrow release, now couldn't it? And yes, why would they do that? Well, think of this for a moment. This here is an incredible clip you need to hear. Take a listen.
And it's not about the U.S. versus China. It's about what underpins a world order is always the financial system. Mm-hmm. I was very privileged. My father was an advisor to Nixon when they came off the gold standard in '71. And so I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else.
And this woman grew up watching this monetary shift change of how to back the money from the gold standard to just fiat back in the petrodollar. And she's telling you that there's a new financial system that is being ushered in. And if that is true, and if this weaponized case from the SEC and Ripple is now in the throes of summary judgment, and this at all is a part of the conversation, and understanding how many people from the Treasury have been on Ripple's board or an advisor from day one, damn near, and the Federal Reserve, you have to ask yourself, if a moment like this is here and the US dollar is the global reserve currency, as Charles Hunter says right here, what leverage does the US have if they don't have control over at least 51% of the XRP? This is the only reason why they are giving a hard time. If they cooperate without any type of leverage being given to the big banks, they lose the reserve currency power. Their time is up. And I think Jay Wall's got it right here as well. Gensler's already said it. In order to appease the central monopolist, you will have to give them half of your company or give them the native token. He stated their price years ago. It's completely crooked, but it's going to happen, he says. And I have to say, somewhere in this may just be some of the outcome of this case. I don't know for sure, and obviously we are speculating wildly. But what else are we going to do when we see the things that we see here? There is a lot that doesn't add up about this case. But when I start to consider the talking points we've gone over today, I have to start asking myself, is this what it's all about? And is this where the argument is headed? Because if it is, I don't know if it's the central monopolists that are really going to win so much as it's the treasury. Because this collapsing crisis that's coming globally is not about real estate swaps anymore, ladies and gentlemen. It's about fiat money and the monetary system. And he who controls the rails controls the world. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. I'm sorry this one got a little long, but that's where we're at today. Check out Ledger, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great way to control your own finances, be your own bank, take control of your portfolio, and buy and sell crypto directly to your cold wallet right there. Click the link underneath the video. I'll catch all of you on the next one.